Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. I'm feeling a little bit better than I was the last two episodes. So, finally getting over a cold, and my allergies still have a sniffly, runny nose, but not coughing a lot. And feeling better than I was the last two episodes of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. So thank God for that. And also, like I said, not coughing a lot. So that is another great thing. Before we go ahead and get started, make sure that you are following the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you want to make sure that you are staying up to date on the latest NHL news and other hockey content I bring on this podcast. It's your number one podcast for all things hockey. All right, we got a lot of NHL news to discuss about for today, so make sure that you stay tuned in to the end of this episode. We're going to go ahead and get started. So, Brad Marchand, he made his Florida Panthers debut last Friday in the Panthers 2-1 overtime win over Utah Hockey Club, and he assisted on Sam Bennett's overtime goal. And Sam Bennett actually had 2 goals in that game, by the way. Brad Marchand assisting on the overtime game winner. So, former foes turning into somewhat best friends. I mean, Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand, they have a short history with each other, especially in the playoffs last season, where these two were going at it in the playoffs and, delivering a lot of physicality to each other. And then, on the other hand, we saw that these two were teammates for Team Canada at the Four Nations, and now they're teammates with each other on the Florida Panthers. But overall, I felt like Brad Marchand had a great Florida Panthers debut. I mean, wasn't really a lot of things take away, but take a look at his stats though, along with the assist that he got on Sam Bennett's overtime game winner. He had a +1, +-. He logged in 16 minutes and 30 seconds of time on ice, 4 shots on goal, 2 blocks, and 2 hits. And he was on that second line with Sam Bennett and Mackie Stamiskevich. Matthew Tkachuk is still out with a lower body injury he sustained with Team USA at the Four Nations. But when he returns come playoff time, boy, oh boy, we will finally get that second line of Brad Marchand, Matthew Tkachuk, and Sam Bennett. The line that we have all been waiting for. And that will be a gritty, physical kind of 4C. I'm not sure if 4C is a word. It's not. But you guys know what I mean. Physical, gritty kind of line right there. And I can't wait to see that come playoff time. And of course, the Panthers went into action on yesterday against the Montreal Canadiens, which was a 4-2 loss for the Florida Panthers in that one. But take a look at Brad Marchand's stats in that game. He didn't have no points in the game. He finished with a neutral 0, ±, 15 minutes and 42 seconds of time on ice, no shots on goal, 1 block, 1 hit. So it wasn't as interesting as his debut was, but still, somewhat of a good performance from Brad Marchand. And, gonna have to get used to playing with these new set teammates. Of course, some of these teammates he's played with in Boston, like AJ Greer, Jesper Boquist, and I don't know if Danton Heider is still on the team. He's probably not, but he played with him in Boston, so got a lot of familiarity in the Florida Panthers group for Brad Marchand. Would have loved to see him score in his debut with the Panthers, and of course in that game yesterday against the Montreal Canadiens, but fortunately, he did not score in any of those games. And, that kind of leads me into my next topic for the Boston Bruins. After trading away Brad Marchand, we kind of talked about this on the podcast before, of what the Boston Bruins were going to do after trading away the longtime captain. But I just thought maybe I'd bring it up since I saw this interesting Twitter post from Bar Down saying that the Brewers are 3-13-3 since February 5th. They're currently on an 8-game losing streak. They're 2-7-1 since trading Brad Marchand. And they moved to 35-9 of the season with 69 points. Their last game was Saturday against Detroit Red Wings, which was a 2-1 loss for the Boston Bruins. They're 8 points out of a playoff spot. 8 games remaining in the season. They have 69 points. But if you're a Boston Bruins fan, you're thinking we're not making the playoffs. And I would surely agree with you that I don't see Boston making the playoffs. I even said it on the podcast before, if you've been listening, that the Bruins were going to make the playoffs after trading away Brad Marchand and other notable trades that the Bruins have made. Trade away Charlie Coyle to the Avalanche. Trade away Trent Frederick to the Edmonton Oilers. Trade away Brandon Carlo to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we're not really sure what the future is going to look like for the Boston Bruins, but it's clear that they're in full rebuild mode now. Full rebuild mode. New Boston Bruins team, and we should expect somebody like David Pastrnak or Charlie McAvoy to get the C for the Boston Bruins, but we'll just have to see who general manager Don Sweeney goes with to be team captain. Personally, for me, I would pick David Pastrnak to be the team captain of the Boston Bruins, but we'll just have to see how that goes. Potential free agents that the Bruins could sign to the team. They could sign a veteran like Patrick Kane. I know Patrick Kane. He and the Blackhawks beat the Bruins before in 2013, but pretty sure Bruins fans forgot about that. They need a veteran leader right now. That could be Patrick Kane or Ryan Donato. I mean, if he chooses not to resign with the Blackhawks, which hopefully he does resign with the Blackhawks in free agency, but if he chooses not to, he could go somewhere like the Boston Bruins. The Bruins could sign Ryan Donato. I don't know if he played with the Bruins before, but if he did, he could come back to Boston and help out that group. But I think he should resign with the Blackhawks in free agency. I mean, he's having a great year in Chicago, up to 29 goals of the season, on pace, possibly trying to get 35 goals before the season is done for the Chicago Blackhawks. But if he chooses not to sign with them, he could sign with the Boston Bruins in free agency. But let me know you guys' thoughts on how do you think this Boston Bruins rebuild is going to go. It's obvious that they're in full rebuild now after trading away some of their key players and their longtime player and captain, Brad Marchand. All right, moving on to the Dallas Stars. So the Dallas Stars, they clinched a playoff spot with a 5-1 win over the Seattle Kraken on Saturday. They will play the Kraken again on Monday, and they moved to 48-21-4 of the season. They won 5 in a row, 5 straight games in a row for the Dallas Stars, and they're the third team in the NHL to clinch a playoff spot. Of course, the first one was the Washington Capitals, and the second was the Winnipeg Jets. They're also the second team in the Western Conference to clinch a playoff spot. Of course, the first being the Winnipeg Jets. Mikko Rantanen had a goal and 2 assists for a 3-point night in the game on Saturday, up to 81 points of the season with a plus 13, plus minus, 31 goals, 50 assists for 81 points in 73 games played, and 11 goals in 11 games played with the Dallas Stars with a plus 4, plus minus since coming over from Carolina. Of course, 4 goals, 7 assists for 11 points in 11 games played with the Dallas Stars. Since that Carolina trade, of course, we talked about on the podcast before that Mikko Rantanen said he did not want to play for Carolina. There's 3 teams that he wanted to play for if he were to get traded from the Colorado Avalanche, and the Hurricanes was not one of them. But 6 points in 13 games played with the Hurricanes this season for Mikko Rantanen. 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points in 13 games played with the Hurricanes with a minus 3, plus minus. And then 64 points in 49 games played with the Avalanche. So it's hard to admit that Mikko Rantanen has played with 3 teams in only one season. Only this 2024-25 season, but everything going well for him in Dallas. Jason Robinson and Rope Hintz each had a goal and assist for a 2-point night. And Wyatt Johnson scored in this game as well. This is 4th straight game that he scored in. He's up to 29 goals of the season, trying to get that 30-goal season right there for Wyatt Johnson. And Jake Andre, he made 35 saves in this game. And for the Kraken, Eli Tolvanen, he scored the long goal for Seattle, while Joey DeCourt made 16 saves. In the loss to the Kraken, of course, following the 5-1 loss, they were eliminated from playoff contention. They lost 4 of their past 5 games, and they moved to 31, 37, and 6 of the season. And like I said, these two teams will play each other on Monday, today, for the final meeting of the season at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And just like the game on Saturday, it will be in Seattle. And it will be at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. On Saturday, they played each other at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. Now it's going to be 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. But moving on from one Central Division team to another, the Blues. They have won 9 straight games, 9 in a row. Pavel Buchnevich, he scored the game-winning goal in the Blues' 2-1 win over the Colorado Avalanche on Saturday. And the Blues moved to 40, 28, and 7 of the season. And like I said, they won 9 straight games. They're 11-1-1 in their past 13 games, and they're 15-2-2 since the Four Nations break. And going into that Four Nations break, they had a 6-5 shootout win over the Chicago Blackhawks. 6-5 shootout win over the Chicago Blackhawks, which was a 10-round shootout, by the way. And their record was 25-26-5 going into the Four Nations break. Now they're 15-2-2 since the Four Nations break. And they're tied with the Minnesota Wild with 87 points and first for a wild card spot in the Western Conference. Of course, the Wild played the Devils on Saturday. They lost 5-2. They will play the Devils again on Monday. That game will be on NHL Network for you to watch. So it's going to be a really critical game for the Minnesota Wild, trying to get their 2 points back and have a 2-point edge over the St. Louis Blues in the wild card race. Zach Bolduc scored the other goal for St. Louis in the game against Colorado, while Jordan Binnington made 28 saves. And man, has Jordan Binnington been on fire since the Four Nations. I mean, he was the main factor on why Team Canada won the Four Nations against Team USA. He's just been on fire right now for the St. Louis Blues. And there's been rumors about how the St. Louis Blues run right now is being compared to the 2019 run when they went all the way and they won the Stanley Cup in 2019. And again, Jordan Binnington being a factor on why St. Louis won the Cup that year. So, and he's proven to being the same factor again in this scenario as well, going back to the Jordan Binnington that we saw. And of course, Jordan Binnington at the time, he was a rookie goaltender when the Blues won the Stanley Cup in 2019. And he's just been unreal of late. I mean, lots of good things to say about Jordan Binnington. For the Colorado Avalanche, Nathan McKinnon, he scored the long goal for the Avs, and with the goal, he extends his home point streak to 24 games for the Avalanche. And Mackenzie Blackwoods made 25 saves in the loss, and the Avalanche's 4-game winning streak comes to an end, and their 11-game home win streak comes to an end. And with that, they move to 45-26-3 of the season, and they are back in action Monday against the Calgary Flames at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. Final game of a 4-game homestand for the Colorado Avalanche before they start a 3-game road trip into Windy City in Chicago on Wednesday. And so far during their 4-game homestand, they're 2-1-0. And of course, that game on Monday will air on Amazon Prime for Canadians up north. And the Blues start a 3-game homestand against the Detroit Red Wings on Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. But staying with the St. Louis Blues, Jimmy Snuggerud, he signs a 3-year entry-level contract deal with the St. Louis Blues on Friday. He was drafted 23rd overall by the St. Louis Blues in the first round of the 2022 NHL Draft. He could make his NHL debut Tuesday when the Blues play the Detroit Red Wings at home. He had 51 points in 40 games played with the Golden Gophers this season, 24 goals, 27 assists for 51 points in 40 games played with the Golden Gophers this season. This is also his first season as team captain of the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And during his 3 seasons with the Golden Gophers, he had 135 points in 119 games played, so 66 goals, 69 assists for 135 points in 119 career NCAA games with the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And like I mentioned, he played 3 seasons with them. He also had 113 penalty minutes, so I actually found that, kind of impressive as well for Jimmy Snuggerud. And fun fact, he is one of only 3 Golden Gophers players in Golden Gophers franchise history to score 20 or more goals in 3 consecutive seasons to begin his college hockey career. And other honorable mentions, he was on the first All-Star Big Ten team for the 2nd consecutive season, and he received a selection as a top 10 finalist for the Hobie Baker Award, which of course goes out to the top player in college hockey. He is also a 3-time medalist for Team USA. He won silver medal at the 2022 World Juniors. He won bronze medal at the 2023 World Juniors, and he won gold medal at the 2024 World Juniors. And I want to say that he won gold medal at the 2025 World Juniors, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I just know he won those other 3 gold medals with Team USA during the World Juniors. But those are my thoughts and stuff on Jimmy Snuggerud. Now we're going to move on to some other Golden Gophers players, and Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel. So Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel made their NHL debut yesterday in the Blackhawks 5-2 loss to Utah Hockey Club. And both players, they signed their 3-year entry-level contract deals on Saturday following the conclusion of their college hockey season with the Minnesota Golden Gophers, which of course was a 5-4 heartbreaking overtime loss to UMass. And there was a controversial penalty call. I think it was for UMass, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but from what I heard, it was a controversial tripping penalty call on UMass in overtime, and of course the refs, as always, didn't call the penalty, and that led to UMass scoring the overtime game-winning goal and ended the season for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And I kind of feel bad for Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel, because you kind of want to close out your college hockey career on a good note and in the Frozen Four, winning a national championship. But obviously that is not the case for them. But after the loss, they immediately joined the Blackhawks, and they had a limited practice for the Blackhawks, but despite that, they were slotted into the lineup. And take a look at Oliver Moore's stats in the game against Utah. He had 2 shots on goal, 15 minutes and 3 seconds of ice time, and he was I would say all over the place. But he had a solid debut overall. I really liked this game. He seemed calm. You could tell he really wanted it. And like he said, at least I'm a paraphrase what he said, at the end of the day, just want to play hockey. Don't want to worry about the media. Don't want to worry about what's going on right now. He just wants to play hockey. I would probably feel the same way if I was him. Like, I wouldn't worry about the media. I would just play hockey. And I think LeBron had said something about that on the Pat McAfee show when he was talking about his son, Bronny, and how he tells him not to worry about the media, not to worry about the outside noise, just play basketball, follow him more, just play hockey. Don't worry about what's going on in the media. But overall, like I said, I thought he had a great debut for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And for Sam Rinzel, he also had a great debut for the Chicago Blackhawks. He had 20 minutes and 15 seconds of time on ice, had 4 shots on goal, 2 hits in the game. And Sam Rinzel, I got to admit, he was pretty impressive. I feel like he had the better overall debut. Between Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel probably had the better all debut than Oliver Moore. I still like Oliver Moore's debut, but I felt like Sam Rinzel's was just a little bit better. And he had some pretty good quality scoring chances again his first NHL goal. I mean, he was wide open in the slot on one of them. I saw that Lucas Vico had set him up wide open in the slot, and he didn't bury it, unfortunately. And then he had another great chance in the second period, but couldn't get it to go. And I feel like, man, you could tell he had like a sigh of relief, man, oh man, I just wanted it. So you could tell he really didn't want it, and he felt in his veins hard. He had it in his veins. He was on it in his NHL debut, and that's why I said I felt like he had the overall better debut than Oliver Moore did. He had 2 hits in this game as well, so I believe he could develop into a top 4 defenseman for the Chicago Blackhawks in the near future, and possibly a 2-way defenseman for the Hawks as well. So, but let me know you guys' thoughts on that. But overall, I felt like it was a great debut, and I wish both of them would have scored in their debut, especially after the heartbreak loss for the Golden Gophers during the college hockey tournament, NCAA college hockey tournament. I wish both of them could have scored, but obviously not the case in this one. But riding out on the bright side, picked up his 29th goal this season. Possibly could get up to 35 goals this season. Like I mentioned already, he's had a great year in Chicago. Connor Bedard assisted on the goal. Joe Veleno had the other goal for the Blackhawks in the game. And Chicago lost their 3rd straight game in a row. Another day, another loss. Not really that surprised, but I think, one takeaway from this loss, besides the Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel debut, was just the turnovers. Turnovers was, really crucial in the loss, and just redirections in general. I mean, Utah, you should go back and watch that game. Utah, at least some of the goals, or at least the majority of the goals, came on redirections. And I felt like that was another takeaway from the loss, besides the turnovers and besides the Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel debuts. It was just redirection goals for Utah, and that's what made them come out with the win against the Blackhawks. But the Blackhawks conclude their 5-game homestand against the Colorado Avalanche on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. That game will air on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max for you guys to watch. But moving on to Alex Ovechkin. So Alex Ovechkin, he scores goal number 890 in the Capitals' 8-5 loss to the Sabres. He's just 5 goals away from passing Wayne Gretzky on the NHL's all-time goal scoring list. Just 5. Just needs 5 goals, and then he'll be the NHL's all-time goal scoring leader. And he also had 2 assists in the game as well for a 3-point night. He's only 39 years old. He'll turn 40 in September. And I felt like if he didn't get injured in a game against Utah back in November, I felt like he could have broken the record by now. But because he was injured, he missed 16 games. During that time, he was out for a while. And his goal scoring record, or at least goal scoring chase, was on hold. But I felt like if he wasn't injured And if he didn't get injured that game against Utah, he probably would have broken the record by now. And people are looking at April 12th, April 13th, which is back-to-back games against the Columbus Blue Jackets, of where he could possibly break the record. So on April 12th, April 13th, he might can break the record on there. But as a Blackhawks fan, I'm hoping for Ovi to break the record on Friday, in Friday's game. And of course, the Capitals play the Blackhawks on Friday. This Friday, the Capitals play the Blackhawks. And I'm hoping for Ovi to break the record in that game as a Blackhawks fan. And that will be a home game for the Capitals as well. And the Capitals, they play the Bruins tomorrow. They play the Hurricanes on Wednesday. And then on Friday, they play the Blackhawks. And I'm hoping for that game. That's the game that Alex Ovechkin breaks the record in. So, yeah. And it certainly gained a lot of attention as well for Alex Ovechkin breaking this record, especially with him now being just 5 goals away from the record. But the bad side of this, the Capitals, 3-game losing streak. They lost 3 in a row. Not looking so good for the Capitals, but at least they clinched the playoffs, and they're in the playoff spot, obviously. And they will look to end their 3-game skid Tuesday against the Boston Bruins at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. First of a back-to-back set for the Capitals. They will play the Hurricanes on Wednesday. That game will be on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. So we'll see if Alex Ovechkin can score in both of those games, which I am hoping he does. And I probably said this either on the podcast or off air, that every time when the Capitals play, I'm tuning in because I want to see Ovi break that goal record. I want to see him break that goal record. Just 5 goals away from doing it. You can feel the genuineness and the hype that I have, and that I'm feeling right now because I really want him to break that goal record. I think that will be a moment not just in hockey history, but in sports history as well. And like I heard before, I think I heard this before, that if Alex Ovechkin gets closer and closer to Wayne Gretzky's goal record, which, it is becoming inevitable that he is, Wayne Gretzky was going to follow along and, travel with the Capitals to see Alex Ovechkin break his goal record live in person. So that's what I heard before. I think I mentioned that on the podcast before, but if I didn't, mentioning it now, that Wayne Gretzky was going to follow the Capitals and attend their games live in person to see Alex Ovechkin break his record. All right, NHL games on the slate for today. So there's only 4 games on the slate. Got the Minnesota Wild taking on the New Jersey Devils at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This game will air on NHL Network. Last meeting of the season, these two teams recently played each other on Saturday, with the Devils winning 5-2. Nico Hischier hat-trick in that game, by the way. And like I mentioned before when I was talking about the St. Louis Blues, the Wild are tied with the Blues for 87 points for first place in the wild card spot in the Western Conference, and they hope to get a big win over New Jersey in this game as the playoffs come near. Stanley Cup playoffs start on April 20th, by the way, if you didn't know that. And then we got the Nashville Predators taking on the Philadelphia Flyers at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Last meeting of the season between the two teams. The Flyers won 3-2 in overtime back in Nashville on November 27. A comeback win for the Flyers in that game, and Charles Couturier had the overtime game-winning goal in that game. And the Predators lost 2 in a row. We all know they're not going to make the playoffs, and it's been rough for the Predators this whole entire season. And then we got the Calgary Flames taking on the Colorado Avalanche at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. This game will air on Amazon Prime for my fellow Canadians up north. Last meeting of the season between the two teams, Colorado Avalanche won the first 2 meetings of the season series. Both of those games being in Calgary with a final score of 4-2. They look to sweep the season series against the Flames in this one at home to end their 4-game homestand. And then we got the Dallas Stars taking on the Seattle Kraken at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Last meeting of the season. These two teams were at it on Saturday in Seattle, which was a 5-1 win for the Dallas Stars. And, of course, they played each other in October in Dallas, which was a 2-0 shutout win for the Stars at home on October 13th. Before we end the podcast, the Frozen Four is finally set. It is set to go on April 10th. It will be the Penn State Nittany Lions taking on the BU Terriers. Penn State won 3-2 in overtime against UConn to advance, and the BU Terriers also won 3-2 in overtime to advance. They beat Cornell 3-2 in overtime to advance. So it will be the Penn State Nittany Lions taking on the BU Terriers. And then it will be the Western Michigan Broncos taking on the Denver Pioneers. Western Michigan won 2-1 in regulation to advance against UMass. And then the Denver Pioneers won 3-1 against the BC Eagles to advance. Of course, the Denver Pioneers won last year's Frozen Four. They will look to repeat as national champions in St. Louis. For Penn State and Western Michigan, this will be their first Frozen Four appearance in their program history. So congratulations to those two colleges right there. Hope everything goes out well for them in their favor. But obviously, especially for the Western Michigan Broncos, because they're up against the defending champs and the Denver Pioneers. And, of course, the Denver Pioneers looking to win back-to-back titles right there. And, of course, they got a winning coach in David Carl. And we'll see how everything goes during the Frozen Four in St. Louis at the Enterprise Center. Of course, next Wednesday on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, I will preview the Frozen Four for all four of those teams. So you want to make sure that you're staying tuned in for that. But that will be on next Wednesday's episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday. Alright guys, that is going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it. Like I said, make sure to go follow the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time. #1 podcast for all things hockey. So you want to make sure that you're staying tuned in so you can get the latest NHL news as it comes out. And this will be the podcast for it. Nobody breaks it down better than me. So just a quick reminder to go ahead and follow on all your local podcast streaming platforms right now. Both of you guys have a great rest of your day. God first as always. Be blessed. I will see you guys Wednesday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Take care.